Hestia would look outside of the window of her mansion, looking on at the city of Orario from a distance, the great tower that stood in the center of the city that led into the dungeon and its depths. Bell and his party still hadn't returned by now, and the barrier was already being put into place. Of course, the other gods were worried about the members of their familia who hadn't come back either. While they always knew to have faith, it was still better to be prepared for the worst case scenario. Hercules had already stormed off a while ago in preparation for the battle that was to come, should the destroyer and its forces make its way to the surface. One thing to keep in mind is that not every god in the city of Orario, and even on the earth for that matter, were warrior gods, or gods that came from a warrior class. For example, Hestia in and of herself was not a warrior. While she did have warriors and adventurers in her familia, she herself did not have any combat experience or practicality. If it came down to it, a destroyer would kill her with ease. And so much could be said for a lot of other gods in a similar circumstance. Most of the war gods were killed in the great battle with Gore the God Butcher long ago. That's why so few of them remained. Even now, many of the gods themselves were worried, so much so that they had even begun plans for evacuation. They knew in the grand scheme of things they wouldn't stand much of a chance, and it was better to simply leave than to have your familia subjected to an untimely and gruesome demise. "Have you heard anything yet?" Hestia would ask. "No," Hermes would reply. "Nothing on my end. So far, no one's been able to contact Bell or his party. Hercules is being tied up into a frenzy right now. In all likelihood, if it comes down to it, he's prepared to storm in there and pull them out. And what have the other gods said to that? Most of them still agree to the rule. Gods aren't allowed to enter into the dungeon. If Hercules tries to go in there by force, then naturally we're gonna have to stop him. If we even have the strength to do such a thing," Hephaestus would say. Even Loki was pretty worried about Bell. "A few of my familia are staying back to fight, but I've sent the rest to the border of the city just in case. None of them wanted to leave, even though I gave them the option to." "You have a loyal familia, Loki. Of course they wouldn't." "Honestly, I can't say that I disagree with Hercules. If I knew that my familia were in trouble, I would go in there without any hesitation. Even I don't fully understand why we agreed to such rules, but they are the way they are," Lord Zuchi would say. "There's nothing that we can do to change them now. All we can do is have faith in our familia, have faith in our children, that they will return, and that this darkness will be abated. So what about the forces that have been gathered together currently?" "Well," Hestia would say, "from what I've been able to understand, most of the fourth-ranked heroes and above, they're all being gathered just outside the gates of the dungeon. They're to be on standby in case the barriers are broken through. How many levels will the barrier affect? Levels 1 through 3. That's where the barriers will be at their strongest. Hopefully it'll be able to contain the monster. But in all likelihood, even if it holds up," Hephaestus would ask, "who's to say that they won't try and find another way out? Finding another way out of the dungeon is a lot easier said than done," Hermes would say. "Even if they can't get through the regular means, and they have to find an alternate route, who knows how long it'll take for them to do so, if they're ever able to find it at all. And if they did find it, it'd be the end of everything. I'd hate to say it, but one way or another, that destroyer needs to be defeated. We can't allow for it to roam free. Just one would already prove to be more than a headache." Do you believe the rumors, though? Lord Zuchi would ask. What rumors? Hephaestus would ask. That there are 2 more out there in the world. But I thought that Thor and the other war gods destroyed them in the last great battle. Most of them, yes, but seeing as how there's one that's already been brought back to life, who's to say that the rumors of the other 2 aren't also more than just rumors? We should be thankful that we're only dealing with one. Let us hope, though, Hestia would say, that this day will only come to pass and be little more than a nightmare. In the meantime, Bel and his party alliance were making their way through the secret passages led by Beta Ray Bill. There was little time for conversation and pleasantries. They were going to head off the Enchantress in her destroyer right at the pass. In all likelihood, Boris would tell the group, the gods will probably make their barrier to go down to the first 3 floors. That'll probably be a way of concentrating their power and keeping it at its strongest. But why just the 3 floors, though? Welf would ask. Because the gods' powers, as great as they are, they're limited. Every time you try to build a barrier, the deeper you go, the weaker it'll be on each floor. Think of it like a concentration of power, all of it bunched up together in a tight formation. Now imagine spreading that power. The farther the power spreads, the less and less effective it becomes. So focusing on the first 3 floors, the first 3 levels of the barrier would be at its absolute strongest. If they attempt to push it to a 4th or a 5th or a 6th floor, each floor they reach, their power would progressively get weaker and weaker and weaker. But that has to take into consideration how many gods are helping with the barrier at the moment. Do you think they're all helping, though? One of them would ask. Probably, but there's going to be a few that aren't. If all of them were able to work together, I'd likely assume that they'd be able to cover at least 12 to 13 floors worth of barrier that would be pretty strong. But seeing as how this whole situation sprung up at the last minute, along too with the evacuation of the dungeons, the first 3 levels are probably going to be heavily secured with their barrier technique. So we need to cut them off when they're gonna be running into that barrier. So somewhere in the 4th floor. That'll be our likeliest bet. Hey, little rookie, Boris would ask. You got a plan to beat this damn thing? 'Cause no offense, you guys got pretty wrecked the first time around. Everyone will look to Bel in that moment. They wondered if he actually had a plan. In truth, he didn't. In the grand scheme of things, what could have changed in the last few days that could have made him any stronger to fight against the destroyer? Chances are it was nothing. There was nothing that he could have done. But even still, he owed it to try. Because quite frankly, he didn't have any other choice. There was nowhere for him to go. For any of them. Either they beat the destroyer here and now, or the destroyer would win and soon make its way to the surface and kill and destroy everything that they cared about. I'm not entirely sure of what I'm going to do when we find it, Bel would say. But I know we can beat it. We don't have a choice. We have to go all out and take it down by any means necessary, even if it cost us our lives. There were a few who were somber at the thought of it costing their lives, though. They would have hoped that Bel would have said something along the lines of, if we stick together, we can overcome any obstacle, any challenge. We'll be able to make it through and see tomorrow. But honestly, Bel had no qualms of telling the truth in this moment. Perhaps saying something more uplifting would have been the best course of action, but actually, in the end, his party appreciated his candid honesty. There was no point in lying to them about the fight they were getting into, about what it could potentially lead to. In the end, this was a fight for survival, and there was a good chance that some of them might not make it through. All the same, moving through the emergency pathways, Beta Ray Bill was keenly focused on this battle. As a part of the Xenos, he remembered the time when Thor walked the Earth. He was a lot younger back then, a little up-and-coming warrior in the joint army against the God Butcher. But he remembered the destroyers rather fondly. He remembered feeling helpless against them, watching his brothers and sisters be killed by them on the battlefield, until the likes of Thor and Hercules arrived. All his life, he always swore that if he ever got a chance to destroy one of those damn things, he'd do so, all pun intended. The destroyers, Gore the God Butcher, he'd messed up his people in many ways. This was his chance for revenge. He'd committed to it in his heart long since, and he had no plans on backing down now. This is what he felt his life had been leading towards. In the meantime, the Enchantress, along with the destroyer that she had managed to tame under her control, were making their way through to the 4th floor, with any monsters that they hadn't destroyed now subjugated to her will, following behind her, building quite the little army. This was her mission given to her by her goddess, to ensue chaos and fear into the other gods. They had grown weak and soft in their time of laziness and leisurely livings. This was just a kick in the ass. Once the destroyer reached the surface, chances are there would be a slaughtering of some of the gods. Of course, she knew fully well that in the grand scheme of things, the destroyer was never going to be able to win against all the gods. But the point wasn't for it to win. The point was to weaken their forces, to weaken their will, their resolve, kill as many of their top-tier adventurers and heroes as possible, and suddenly Orario becomes much more vulnerable, much more easier to overtake. Although, what she didn't expect was for a particular party of individuals to cut her off at the pass. She grinned when she heard the cry of lightning bolt, the destroyer immediately moving into a defensive position, blocking against Bell's attack, as the others followed close behind him. So the riffraff did survive that encounter. And look, even little Miss Ryu, our friendly neighborhood spider, coming to greet her god and her superior. Enough of this, Enchantress, Ryu would say. Are you mad? You know what the destroyer's capable of. You know what it's going to. Yeah. I'm fully aware of my actions, and I know exactly what I'm going to do. Come on, what happened to that backbone, Ryu? You used to be so much more lively, so much more bloodlusted, rageful. And yet, I feel little to none of it from you now. You've been domesticated, neutered even more than you already have. Although, what else can I expect from a half-elf like yourself? In the end, you're all bark and no bite. It's not too late to change things, Bell would say, as he stepped forward in front of his group. It doesn't have to be like this. I don't know why you're doing what you're doing. I don't know what could be motivating you to lead this path of destruction, but it's not too late. Are you actually trying to seek peace with me? And here I thought that you were the next incarnation of Thor, a true warrior, And yet you seek peace, and you seek to spare my life. It's so cute. But unfortunately, cute isn't going to work with me. Now, maybe if you wanted to serve at my side, get down on your hands and knees and beg me like a good little doggy, perhaps I'll reconsider it. To have the power of Thor at my side, that's not a bad prospect. How about that, Belle? You like that idea? I could be your master. Of course, no one was going to go for that, especially a couple of girls in this said party who didn't take too kindly to the enchantress's words, especially Ryu as her aura began to rise at that statement. To talk about Belle in such a way, and in her presence? However, Belle would simply raise Mjolnir, pointing it straight towards the enchantress. I do apologize, but I'm afraid you've got the wrong idea. I have no qualms with killing you. I'll do what I have to do to protect my familia, to protect my friends, to defend my goddess and my city. I won't hesitate to end you, but I'm giving you a chance to set things right, because I feel you are owed that much. This is your last chance, Enchantress. Call off your monsters. Deactivate the destroyer and turn back now. And I promise your life will be spared. Oh, Belle. Oh, I believe that your joke is even funnier a second time. But let me reassure you, nothing stops here, except for you and your friends. You've chosen to get in my way, and that makes you my enemy. Fine then. Belle simply closed his eyes as a powerful aura enshrouded his body, crackles and sparks of lightning forming around him. You've made your decision, and I guess you've left me with no choice but to follow through on mine. With that, Belle would jump forward, the enchantress moving off the shoulder of the destroyer as she commanded the other hordes of monsters, sending them forth. Destroy them all! The monsters would engage with Belle and his party, while Belle and Beta Ray Bill would go charging directly towards the destroyer. Beta Ray from the left and Belle from the right, both of them wielding the powerful weapons of Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. Beta Ray would attempt to cut at the leg of the destroyer, with the axe only leaving but a dent as the destroyer attempted to kick him off. Belle would come flying in, swinging his hammer and delivering a devastating right hook of a hit. The destroyer's eyes would begin to glow as it began to spew out powerful fire. Belle spinning Mjolnir on his wrist, using it as a way of shielding him and Beta Ray from the fire. Thanks for the save, Beta Ray said. It's no problem, but we're not done yet. This thing's really tough. It's going to be hard to bring down. Well, 2 Thors are better than 1. I say, we beat it with good old-fashioned blunt force trauma. Meaning, we're going to kick the hell out of this damned bastard until it's nothing but scrap metal. Understood. Both Belle and Beta Ray Bill would shoot off powerful torrents of lightning at the monster as they engaged with it once more. In the meanwhile, both Azari and Ryu would engage with the Enchantress, her skills in illusion and defensive magic being more than capable of holding her own, as she used her charms and illusions to trick both Azari and Ryu each time, creating a multitude of herself. What's the matter, Ryu? You can't tell who the real one is? Why am I not surprised? You've never been able to see through my illusions. Until now. Ryu would close her eyes, not giving in to the use of her sight, but using her senses. Azari watched as the other enchantresses would phase through her body, as Ryu used her senses to find where the real one was, hidden away amongst the horde of monsters. She set her sights and targeted at the enchantress, moving and blitzing towards her with blinding speed. Just at the last second, 2 skeleton knights would appear with their swords at the ready. However, Azari would quickly move in between them both, using 2 of his daggers as he hacked away at the skeletons, creating an opening for Ryu to strike. The enchantress would create a shield of magic, using it to block away at the attack of Ryu, sending them both back once again. Her specialty was long-ranged attacks, so she had to create distance, hide away in the midst of the chaos, and pick her moments to strike. The other members of Belle's party would fight against the monsters, watching and assisting where they could, as Belle would continue on in its fight against the Destroyer, along with Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray would attempt to strike at the chest of the monster, burying his axe midway through, while Belle would reach around with Mjolnir, striking it in the back of the head. Of course, it staggered the beast, but only temporarily, as it eventually regained its senses, pulling Stormbreaker right out of its chest, actually being able to hold it. Of course, for Beta Ray, he called back forth his weapon, but the monster was able to hold on to it long enough to try to take a swing at him. However, Belle would catch Stormbreaker with Mjolnir, the 2 weapons clashing and giving off their powerful auras, knocking away everything around them. How in the hell is it able to do that? It doesn't matter. Belle looked up to the Destroyer, its eye beams getting prepared to fire off another torrent of fire. I don't think so. Lightning bolt! The streaking bolts of lightning would clash with the fire, as Belle would knock Stormbreaker out of the Destroyer's hands. Beta Ray would summon the weapon forth once again, as he took another swing, the monster holding up its left arm as he hacked away at it once more. You think you're so tough, huh? Do ya? You're not tough enough. Not tougher than us. You're gonna die here, you hear me? You end! Beta Ray Bill would summon another torrent of lightning, the lightning running up its arms, running through the Destroyer itself. He channeled as much of it as he could, trying to stun the beast into submission, long enough as Belle would take a swing at its kneecaps, hitting it hard and causing it to stagger to the ground, as they would continue to double team on the Destroyer, looking to defeat it once and for all. In the midst of all of the fighting that was taking place, the Enchantress could see that there was more power to these familias, more power than she could have possibly have fathomed. At this rate, they might have been able to take out the Destroyer. This wasn't good. What was worse was that the damn members of that Bast goddess, they just had to show up. Azari, along with the elite 4 members of the Dora Milaje, would assist their champion, the Black Panther. They soon had her cornered in a section of the dungeon, along with Ryu. It is time for you to give up, Enchantress. You have nowhere else to run. It's the end, Ryu would say. I know Bell. He's too kind-hearted of a boy. He shouldn't have to face dealing with the likes of you. Oh, is that so? Spare me the tears, you damned elf bitch. I don't care about your precious Bell, Thor, or whatever the hell you want to call him. I do what I do in service for my master. She will be the one to rule over this land, and the entire world as well. You think you're safe? You think any of you are safe? This will be your tomb. I promise you that. They all were prepared to attack at the enchantress, looking to strike her down once and for all. However, the enchantress would simply smile as she grabbed hold of a golden gemstone, crushing it in her hands and being enveloped in a glowing light. This is the end for you, Ryu. You can just go to hell. The enchantress would disappear in green smoke as the light would envelop and transform, turning into a monster. A monster that was a fused amalgamation of other monsters in the dungeon. Just as Bell's party had managed to defeat the last of the monster horde that had been brought together by the enchantress, Welf and Lily looking on to see what was happening with Ryu and the Zari, while Bell and Beta Ray Bill continued their fight with the Destroyer. They saw it for themselves. No way. What the? Beta Ray was temporarily distracted, giving the Destroyer a free shot as he sucker punched the Xenos in the face. Bell would catch Stormbreaker that was in the air, holding both the axe and the hammer, as he blocked another attack of fire from the Destroyer. Everyone preparing, as another monster entered into the fray. It was the Juggernaut. How, Boars would say. How the hell is the Juggernaut here? It's only supposed to respawn on the 27th floor. Oh God. That's not just the Juggernaut. It's not, Welf would say. The body of the Juggernaut, it looked like a fused amalgamation of all of the monsters in the dungeon, all rolled into one. This was the true power of the Juggernaut. It went by many names, many titles. But among many of them, there was one that was most synonymous. The Juggernaut was no ordinary monster in the dungeon, no. It was a monster created by Gore the God Butcher, and he referred to it by another name. It was called the Dark Phoenix, and there was a reason for that. Just as it is said in legend, that the Phoenix will die and rise again, so true was that for the Juggernaut. But the Juggernaut devoured more than just adventurers, no. The Juggernaut devoured other monsters as well. Adventurer, god, hero, monster, all in the same. It didn't matter. Because like a dark phoenix, the embodiment of chaos and evil, no matter how many times it was destroyed, would always rise again. And what was worse, the Enchantress left them with the parting gift of letting the Juggernaut respawn in this particular area. The two harbingers of death, the Juggernaut and the Destroyer, both of them summoned together. This would be the ultimate challenge. the ultimate test. As Bel and his friends prepared for the final clash, the ultimate monsters of the dungeon all brought together with only one purpose: destroy, kill, eviscerate everything in their paths, and leaving nothing to remain. This concludes Danmachi the Last King, What If Bel Cranel Was Thor, Season 4, Part 9. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we will continue and conclude Season 4 of Danmachi the Last King, What If Bel Cranel Was Thor, Season 4, Part 10, the Season 4 finale. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.